chonan soke chonam la jantu padu dagni kyaptu chi dagi chunyan gipe sonam ki jola pese sangye drupa shok sangye chonan soke chonam la jantu padu dagni kyaptu chi dagi chunyan gipe sonam ki jola pese sangye drupa shok Sangye chonan soke chonam na janju padu dagni kyaptu chi dagi chunyan gipe sonam ki jola penche sangye drupa sho.
So let's do some meditation on the breath for a few minutes. So I think you all know how to do this, so just sit comfortably in your best meditation posture. Find your breath where it goes out and comes in through your nostrils. And then focus single-pointedly right there for as long as you can, and also be mindful of what's going on, and as soon as you've noticed that your mind has gone off your breath, without investigating what happened, just drop the distraction and come straight back to your breath. So you may need to keep doing that, but keep doing it. So now, look into your mind, check your motivation for being here this morning. So did you, when you left your house to come here, were you thinking you're coming here in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings? Or was the motivation short of that? Maybe even worldly motivation. So if you find the motivation was worldly, just concerned for the benefit and happiness of this life alone, recognize that as negative, as rooted in attachments, as actual principal cause of suffering. So even though you're here, as a result of that motivation, discard it and replace it with a positive motivation. You can think briefly, the purpose of my life is to reach enlightenment. And lead all sentient beings out of suffering into enlightenment. In order to do that, in order to lead all sentient beings to enlightenment, I have to reach enlightenment myself. Reaching enlightenment depends upon studying, understanding, meditating on, and realizing the entire path to enlightenment, actualizing every step of the path to enlightenment. And that starts with devotion to the Guru. And without the practice of proper Guru devotion, it's impossible to reach enlightenment. So therefore, in order to understand the practice of Guru devotion, in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings, I'm going to study the topic this morning in this class. So generate that kind of motivation, not just in your mind, but intellectually, but in your heart. Try to feel it. Try to feel how terrible the sufferings are of the sentient beings of the six realms of cyclic existence. Feel happy that at least in this life we can do something about it, something to help them. So the text we're looking at is, so did anybody have trouble keeping their mind on their breath for 5-10 minutes without losing it? Nobody had trouble doing that? Oh, I was impressed for a minute there. Thing is, you've got to make your breath more interesting than your thoughts. You know, if there's an interesting, I don't know, did you hear some noise out there or something? What is it? Is it just the rain or somebody out there? Yeah, so the breath has to be more interesting than that, you know. If and the breath itself is pretty boring, you know, although, you know, it'd be worse if it wasn't there. There's not the breath itself really, it's what we need to do really is analytical meditation. So the two kinds of meditation, analytical and stabilizing, concentrative, single-pointed, placement. I mean, it has so many different names. What does Damcho use? So we need to do analytical meditation on the benefits of developing single-pointed concentration, or shamatha, shini, calm abiding. I think we talked about that once a few years ago. The 9 stages, you know, the chart with the monkey and the elephant. And so you know, it's good to do analytical meditation on the benefits of having single-pointed concentration and becoming, you know, very firmly convinced of that. Then when we actually do meditation on the breath, when the breath goes off, we have you know, some solid reason that we've come to ourselves of the benefits of not allowing ourselves to get distracted. So when I have sort of an interesting, distracted thought, I don't hear that at all. But then when I come back to the breath, it's really loud, you know. So it shows it's possible not to be distracted by that. It's possible. So it says in the teachings that when Atisha had such strong concentration that when he was absorbed in the object, his mind was absorbed, you know, in the object of concentration, you know, your mind becomes almost one with your breath, or whatever it is you're focused on. And even if someone bashed a drum right beside his ear, he wouldn't be distracted. I think it doesn't mean he's not aware, but there's awareness of what's going on, but it doesn't distract you from remaining focused on the object of concentration. Well, we can only dream. So, 50 verses of Guru Devotion is what we're supposed to be doing. And last time I was reading, there are two commentaries that we've pointed everybody to. Yeah? 2 commentaries by Geshe Ngawang Dhargyey. shorter one and a longer one, so I was reading the introduction to the short one. So just to continue that. Through devotion to your guru, showing him respect, so it says him, so I'll just keep it at that, I guess. Showing him respect and making offerings, you accumulate the merit necessary to attain liberation from all suffering. Such service is done not to benefit your guru, but for your own sake. When you plant seeds in a field, it's not to benefit the earth. You're the one who harvests the crops. Therefore, with a proper devotional attitude towards your guru, seeing him as a Buddha, the more positive energy you exert in his direction, the closer you come to Buddhahood yourself. Likewise, if you hate your guru and generate negative energy towards him, you're deliberately distancing yourself from his enlightened state and freedom from pain. As a result, you bring intense suffering upon yourself. Therefore, if you see faults in your guru and tend to belittle him, remember that your opinions are unreliable and that only unhappiness can result from despising the states of happiness he represents. So, it's happened before, and it's happening now. So, it's happened before, it's happening now that certain gurus seem to have behaved badly. And, there are Tibetan teachers who've caused a lot of controversy. Controversy. You've got to learn to say it properly. Controversy. I can't do it. It's like, what's that other word? So, in the early days of Tibetan Buddhism coming to the West, one of the most influential lamas in bringing Tibetan Buddhism to the West was Trungpa Rinpoche. And there's a lot of controversy about him drinking, smoking, having sex with students, like that, And then so people started invoking this term, crazy wisdom. You heard of crazy wisdom? So, that maybe can be traced back to, I don't know where it traced back to originally, but, Mapa, the great, the story of Mapa and Milarepa. So Mapa was a great translator whose main guru was Milarepa, a great Indian pundit, scholar and practitioner, Mahasiddha. And when Milarepa went to him as a student, he wouldn't let him come to teachings. If Milarepa snuck in the back of the room, he'd call him out and throw him out, and send him back to the job he'd given him, which was building a 9-story tower out of rocks that he had to carry himself from some distant river. And then he built this tower with a great deal of hardship, and then once he built it, Marpa chewed him out, said, "Who told you to build that? Take the rocks and put them back where you found them." So then he had to demolish the thing rock by rock and put them back. And then when he finished that, Marpa said, "Where's the tower I told you to build?" So he didn't argue with him. He said, "I built it. I took it down again." He just went and did it. So I don't know how many times this happened, once or twice, 3 times. So, as Lama Tsongkhapa Rinpoche says, if the gurus these days did that, he'd be sued and taken to court. But Rinpoche couldn't think of any instances in Tibet where gurus were sued and taken to court. Then again, they probably had a fairly undeveloped legal system in Tibet when it comes to lawsuits and stuff. I'm not sure how the justice system worked in Tibet, actually. I think mainly they relied on karma. Just sort of sat back and waited and watched. Well, no, it says there were punishments and torture. I don't know how true that is. Probably some truth to it. And Naropa, who was Marpa's guru, was a student of Tilopa, not a great Mahasiddha, and there are 12 difficult things that Tilopa made trials and tribulations that Tilopa put Naropa through, and like jumping off the roof of a 3-story building, and snatching a bride from a huge wedding procession, and lying down on a mud puddle so Tilopa could walk across without getting his feet wet. I don't remember all. There are books. Naropa's life story has been published, and Marpa's and Milarepa's, so you can read all the gory details of what the gurus made them do. But it was in order to first they knew they were mature enough to handle it, but they had to be put through these severe tests in order to quickly purify huge amounts of strong negative karma. And as a result of that karma being purified, they were able to attain realization and attain enlightenment in that life, or if not in that life, in the intermediate state right after that life. So that was the kind of crazy wisdom. They knew their disciples' minds so well that they knew that doing these things that outwardly look so abusive would actually be good for the student. So that's kind of a pretty you have to have the right guru and you have to have the right disciple. And that's a pretty rare combination. Right guru and right disciple. From our side, we have the opportunity to meet plenty of right gurus, actually. Like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and Geshe Tsulga. Unfortunately, we're not really mature enough as disciples that they can give us these difficult tasks, really difficult tasks. Sometimes they ask us to do things that are a little difficult, but nothing like building a 9-story tower rock by rock and then demolishing it rock by rock and then rebuilding it rock by rock. being told off all the whole time, criticised, kicked out of teachings, mocked in front of the other students. I don't know how long we'd last. So, so that was, the devoted students who, I don't know if they saw Trungpa Rinpoche as a Buddha or what, I don't know what was in their mind, but they would excuse it, this apparently non-dharmic behaviour, smoking, drinking, having sex with the students, partying, having dinner at midnight, getting up late, all this stuff which seems opposite of what you're supposed to do as a Dharma practitioner. I say, well, it's crazy wisdom. He knows what he's doing. He's an enlightened master, and like that. I think a lot of students, those of us who weren't his students, looked at that and looked at our gurus, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Ling Rinpoche and Trungpa Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe and Lama Tsongkhapa, all these other gurus who were monks, who didn't drink, who didn't smoke, who didn't have sex, who maintained monastic discipline very purely. We looked at that and thought, thank God I've got these guys and not him, because it would, from the outside it looked like a big difference. From the inside, I don't know, but when people criticised Trungpa Rinpoche to Lama Yeshe, he wouldn't listen to a second of it. He would say, you've got no idea who he is or what you're talking about, So a little confusing, I found, And then when he died, apparently of alcoholism, Trungpa, he appointed the regent, Ursel Tenzin, a Western person, I hesitate to say teacher, a Western student. He put him in charge of the organisation, and he had AIDS, and he had sex with people who didn't, and transmitted AIDS to students without telling them. So then you think, well, who would put someone like that in charge? And that caused a rift in the organisation, big rift. Then he died of AIDS, Ursel Tenzin. And then, so now recently, Trungpa's son, who eventually became head of the organisation, Sakyong, now he's been kicked out or demoted, so because of sexual abuse. So that's just come out. So that's also split the organisation to a certain extent. Then in our own organisation, the FPMT, the organisation of which everybody knows, the FPMT, right? We had this big centre, Manjushri Institute in England, that was bought by Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche students in 76 in Cumbria, a big old priory. And that was destined to become kind of the crown jewel of the organisation. It's a huge building on 70 acres of on Morecambe Bay, up on the north east coast of England. And they sent a Geshe there, Kelsang Gyatso, and some people dispute whether he was actually qualified Geshe or not, and he's been sort of disbarred by Sarah J Monastery. But he went there as resident teacher, and for the first few years it was very successful. He gave amazing teachings. Wisdom Publications published a couple of books of his teachings, and it seemed to be going well. But then he starting his own centres, and so he was kind of invited by the FPMT organisation at the end of his 3-year term to leave Manjushri Institute and go to another big centre he'd started in New York, which is over the other side of the country. Madhyamaka Centre it was called. But he had a lot of very devoted students. So there were a lot of students for whom Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Kelsang Gyatso were their guru. So anyway, so a lot of the students who were living at the Priory, living at Manjushri Institute, didn't want him to go. So they sort of petitioned Lama Yeshe to let him stay, even though he was opening other centres. So he was the second Geshe to go to the West, to FPMT Centre. The first one was Geshe Loden, who went to Chenrezig Institute, the first Western Centre. Actually, it was the second Western Centre. The first one was in Indiana, but that only lasted a year. So we don't count that. So Chenrezig Institute, the Geshe went there, and once he'd been there for a year and a half, with his interpreter, Zazab Tulku, I think he decided that after his 3-year term was up, he wanted to stay in Australia and he wanted to have do his own thing. So while he was there, he started setting up his own centres. So the problem with that kind of empire building is, as I look at it, is he cultivated, in my distorted view, okay, I don't know what was really going on in his mind and what was ultimately beneficial or not, but it looked to me he was using the FPMT as centre there to attract certain students, and so the ones who were good organisers, the ones who had money, the ones who were kind of more together than the drug-crazed hippies, he sort of made them his close students, invite them to lunch, and then when the director of the centre would give them work, because you live there, you have to do certain jobs, they'd go to him and complain, she wants me to do this, she wants me to do that, I'd rather be studying. He'd say, you don't have to do what the director says. You're my student, I'm telling you to study, So then they'd go to the director and say, Geshe-la told me I don't have to wash the dishes, I have to study, So then that causes a problem, So this is the first Geshe. So anyway, I won't go into all the details. But anyway, but at the end of his 3 years, he left. But he did take over the centre in Brisbane that the Chenrezig Institute had set up. This is sort of a branch centre. He actually sent his students there, and he took that over. So, there were these teething problems in the organisation, and so he left, and he set up his own centre. He modestly named the centre in Sydney after himself, Loden Mahayana Centre, and then he set up a few other centres in Australia, and they became quite successful. And Zazab Tulku, his translator, went to Canada, and he's got 2 or 3 centres there. But when the Geshe left the Chenrezig Institute, he took some of the key students with him, ones that he'd cultivated. So then, on the basis of that experience, there was sort of a Geshe agreement was drawn up. One of the things the Geshes aren't supposed to do, when they're at the centre, they're supposed to focus on developing the centre, helping the students learn the Dharma, and to help strengthen the centre, not weaken it. so with him and then with Kelsang Gyatso, he actually staged a coup, and they took the centre over, Manjushri Institute, and they basically said, we don't want to be controlled by an outside government. We want to do our own thing. We know what we're doing. We don't need the FPMT telling us what to do. We don't want to be part of the FPMT. We want to do our own thing. So he cultivated this thought in his students, and there became kind of a rift, really, between Kelsang Gyatso, the teacher there, and Lama Yeshe. And then the students were forced. So it became quite ugly. It was 1983. And, a lot of disharmony, which is the worst thing among students of the same guru. And the students were forced to decide which side they're on, which guru they're going to stick with. So now if you're practicing properly and you're seeing that these gurus are Buddhas, and they all have the same wisdom and the same compassion and the same understanding and the same everything, how do you reconcile that with what appears to be going on? And you're being forced to make a choice between two gurus. So you're going to come down, well, this one was wrong and this one's right, or how do you deal with that? Because for most students, if not all, it was impossible to keep a foot in both camps, But the thing is that if you've established a guru-disciple relationship, if you've taken a teacher as a guru, the worst thing that you can then do is renounce that teacher, and that has all sorts of negative consequences in this life and in future lives. The worst one being, that not finding a guru again for many, many lifetimes, for eons. So, a number of people have written to Lama Zopa Rinpoche about this, and he's given advice, which I think is in the online advice book, Rinpoche's online advice book at lamayeshe.com. And you can't, so you can't renounce a teacher with whom you've established, but you don't have to keep studying with that teacher. You can see, he's still a Buddha, but he's doing this not for me, but for other students. And you can respectfully distance yourself and not continue studying with that teacher. But when we visualize the merit field that has all our gurus in it, you can never take that teacher out of the merit field, even though teacher appears to have done this bad thing, and you've distanced yourself from that teacher, but you still can't renounce that teacher from your heart and think, I was wrong, he's not a Buddha. Is just a deluded sentient being taking advantage of other students, including me, and I'm like that. So, what do you do if you're a student who's been sexually abused by a teacher who you've taken as a guru and you've seen as a Buddha? I mean, it must be extremely hard, But that's the practice, Therefore, it always comes back to, before you establish a guru-disciple relationship with anybody, you have to be so careful that it's the right person. So, we saw Sogyal Laka, so-called Sogyal Rinpoche. big organization, Rigpa, many centers, right? He was finally disgraced, and exposed, if that's the word, for sexually abusing students and abusing and beating them and leading a very sort of dissolute lifestyle and spending the offerings on himself and indulging himself in being a glutton. I mean, there's all these things you hear, I don't know. I mean, that went on for years, decades, actually. And finally, people went to His Holiness. It was very difficult for His Holiness to say anything, because he doesn't want to be the instrument of causing people to breach their Guru devotion and create incredible heavy negative karma by saying, well, the Dalai Lama denounced him, so I can denounce him too, even though he's my Guru. You can't do that. So finally, His Holiness Dalai Lama has referred to him more recently as being disgraced, My friend, Sogyal, has been disgraced. So, But finally, but still for the students, if you're a student, you're stuck in this situation, There's other Lama Nola from the Kagyu Center in Waplinja Falls. He had to step down, kicked out by the board for sexually abusing students, and I don't know what else. But 20 years ago, how do you know that's going to happen? And you become a disciple, and everything seems to be going on okay. And even a lot of these things may be happening. A lot of students don't even know. So, I think that's one of the reasons in the teachings it says that before you take someone as a guru, you should examine that person very carefully for 12 years. I don't know how literal that's supposed to be, but because there's also there's a teaching from, I think, Chandrakirti, that says, I can't quote it verbatim, but it says something like, anybody who takes even a verse of teaching from someone and doesn't regard that person as a guru will be born 500 lives as a dog. You heard that verse? So how do you reconcile that? Okay, take a verse of teaching and you don't recognize that person as a guru, 4 lines as a guru, with examining someone for 12 years. I have no answer. So each of those 2 teachings is saying something else. So when Atisha went, he was circumambulating the stupa in Bodh Gaya, Atisha, and I think it says something like wondering what's the best way to benefit sentient beings, as if he didn't know. But he was like, praying for guidance or something, and there's a Tara. The Tara is still there. Anyone been to Bodh Gaya? Haven't been to the Great Stupa in Bodh Gaya? What was last week's bucket list? Kopan, of course? Yeah. Okay, so the second bucket list, Bodh Gaya, circumambulate Great Stupa, in fact prostrate all the way around it. There's a Tara there that spoke to him. It's still there. You can see that one of the precious objects. There's a Tara who spoke to Atisha and said, if you want to, the best way to benefit sentient beings is to develop bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, you know, determination to reach enlightenment, single sentient. And he was like, how do I do that? He said, well, you need to go study with the great teacher Serlingpa. Serlingpa, he was in Indonesia. There's India, there's Indonesia, Bay of Bengal. So Atisha took a bunch of disciples and they took a boat from India to Indonesia, I think it's Sumatra. And Serlingpa had incredible reputation as an incredible master, realized bodhicitta, a great teacher, the best person to study with and practice under the direction of to develop bodhicitta. So it was a very dangerous journey. It took like 13 months to get across. You know, that was 1,000 years ago. And they had all sorts of difficulties and encounters with sea monsters on the way and stuff. They got there, and of course, Serlingpa and his disciples had heard that this great master from India was coming to visit them and study there. So, so when he arrived, all Serlingpa's monks lined up, all the gelongs, the bhikshus, and Atisha didn't rush up to Serlingpa and start taking teachings. Then he started questioning his disciples, asking what's he really like. You know, how does he spend his day? What does he teach? So he was, even after that long journey, and even being advised by Tara to go and study with him, he didn't rush up and take him in the way that you shouldn't. Like what's the example? The dog grabbing a piece of meat. You know, if there's a hungry dog and you throw a piece of meat, he's not going to examine the meat to see if it's poisoned or how fresh it is or anything. He's just going to gobble it up without question. So that's not the way to take a guru. So Atisha didn't do that either. He started questioning and you know, talking to his students, and then after becoming satisfied, or you know, going through the motions of what you're supposed to do, maybe as a teaching itself rather than what he really needed to do, then he established this relationship and studied with him. I can't remember how long, 12 years? I can't remember how long he stayed there studying, but then he mastered bodhicitta. So now Atisha had, I think, 153 or 158 gurus. It probably says somewhere. It does say somewhere here, I can't remember now. 150 something gurus. But he said whenever he thought of Serlingpa, this master, or whenever he mentioned his name, he prostrate with his hands on the crown of his head, and he said, you know, his hair would stand on end, and he'd get goosebumps just thinking of that great teacher. His root guru, you know, the root guru, the one who had the strongest effect on his mind, Dhamma effect on his mind. He saw them all as equally as Buddhas, but still, when he remembered Serlingpa, he showed that extra respect because of the connection they had between them, you know. Therefore, if you see faults in your guru and tend to belittle him, remember that your opinions are unreliable and that only unhappiness can result from despising the states of happiness he represents. So we may not be put in difficult situations like Tilopa and Milarepa. You know, see that wedding party over there? No, there's no wedding party over there. This is a story. It's Tilopa telling Milarepa, you know. He said, go and grab the bride's breasts. You know. So, without hesitation, Milarepa does that. He gets beaten up by the husband and all the others, and to within an inch of his life, you know, and left behind. And Tilopa goes off, leaves him there. Everyone goes off, and he's lying. Or when he jumped off. Anyway, you'd read the stories. It's amazing. So we're not put through that kind of test. We're not put through the Mapa Milarepa test of building down and tearing this tower and getting kicked out of teachings and abused in front of all the other students, although that does happen. We're given these other tests. Guru behaving badly, you know, apparently. So we have to see that. If that's our guru and we've taken that person as a guru and see that guru as a Buddha, then that's the test we are put through. Are we well established, mature enough to see those actions? Okay, this is not for me. I don't need to stay around here. But he's doing this enlightened activity for the benefit of others. It is on my karma to benefit from these activities. So I'll study with other teachers. So far in the FPMT, subsequent teachers, you know, there were these issues with Geshe Loden and Kelsang Gyatso. Kelsang Gyatso, of course, went to develop this huge NKT organization, and he became, you know, like the world's leading advocate for the practice of Shugden, this spirit that His Holiness advised people not to practice, and they used to do demonstrations against His Holiness. Maybe they still do some of them. Have you seen those? So that was him. That was the second FPMT teacher who led all that. You know, no one's seen him for a while. We don't know if he's alive or dead. It's very weird, the whole thing. You know. That issue itself was another test of Guru devotion, you know, because His Holiness used to do that practice, and Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa, we all used to, a lot of us used to do that practice, and then when His Holiness came out against it, a lot of his disciples didn't follow his advice and continued to do the practice. So how they reconcile that in their mind, I have no idea, you know. Or did they renounce His Holiness and do that? Now, Gonsa Rinpoche, who was student, disciple, and translator for Geshe Rapton, who was one of our main teachers, one of Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche's main teachers, Geshe Rapton. he passed away a lot of lamas passed away in 83, 84, 85. Not just Lama Yeshe. Ling Rinpoche passed away. Trije Rinpoche passed away in 1981. So those are Trije Rinpoche I mentioned last week. He's a root guru of Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. He passed away in 81. He was probably the greatest disciple of Pabonka Rinpoche. Pabonka Rinpoche was a great practitioner or proponent of practice of Shugden. And Trije Rinpoche was also, and also his students, Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa, they used to practice that. Song Rinpoche. Ribush Rinpoche, Geshe Rinpoche. I think other lamas didn't. Ling Rinpoche, I don't think. Zirkon Rinpoche, I don't think they did. So there were like that. So Zirkon Rinpoche passed away, 83 or 84. Ling Rinpoche, Song Rinpoche, Geshe Lama's brother, Lama Yeshe's brother, Geshe Tinley, 85. Geshe Rapton, Geshe Champa Wongdu, one of the great lamas from Dharamsala. Just in that 2 or 3 year period. And one of the stories is that His Holiness had a lot of obstacles around that time, and they took His Holiness's obstacles on themselves to allow His Holiness, who's kind of the light of the world, to continue to exist. So they took our negative karma on themselves so that we continue to have the appearance of His Holiness. So in the mid-90s, when His Holiness came out against the practice, finally, that caused another kind of schism amongst the Tibetan community, in the monasteries, amongst a lot of the teachers. So some, Lama Zopa Rinpoche immediately went with His Holiness, and so those of us who were doing the practice, and it was kind of a serious thing. For it was was taught that Dorje Shugden is a Buddha, a manifestation of Manjushri, and a strong protector of the Gelugpa tradition. A lot of other traditions feel it was very sectarian, and he caused people who are followers of that to disparage Nyingma and Kagyu, and to a lesser extent Sakya tradition. Sakya and Gelug are a lot closer than Kagyu and Gelug or Nyingma and Gelug, partly because, I don't know why exactly, but Lama Tsongkhapa's main guru, Rendawa, was a Sakya. So, and before Lama Tsongkhapa there was no Gelug tradition. He started it. So he studied with teachers from the other traditions. What am I saying? Yeah. So we were told that, and the initiation can only be given to 3 disciples at a time, and then you have to do a practice. You commit to do a practice once a month for the rest of your life. Shugden practice, and you make this solemn promise to your guru who gives you the initiation I remember one time soon after this happened, in the late 90s, I think it was probably, I was talking to Geshe Rinpoche on the phone, and this came up. And we were talking about the practice, and I don't know if I asked him straight out if he's still doing it or what, but he said he's very mindful of His Holiness' advice to stop doing the practice. He's not a Buddha, it's a spirit, and it's harmful to the Tibetan community in exile, it's harmful to the Dharma, it causes sectarianism, and it shouldn't be practiced. And there's a lot been written about this. There's tons of stuff online. Books have been written about it, about this practice, and what's happened since His Holiness kind of didn't exactly ban it. He can't ban a practice. He's advised people not to do it, and said, if you do the practice, don't come to my teachings. Don't take initiation from me. You take initiation from His Holiness, he becomes your guru. If you're doing the practice, you can't be his disciple because you're contravening it. So you just, there's a unbridgeable gap there. So when His Holiness came out against it, it caused people to have to make the decision. So Gonsa Rinpoche, who Geshe Rapton had, he taught in Dharamsala for a long time, many years. He had a lot of students there, and I think we published one of his first books, Advice from a Spiritual Friend, commentary on the 7-point thought training, mind training, and he was a strong practitioner, and so his closest disciple, Gonsa Rinpoche. So in the mid-70s, he went to Switzerland. The Tibetans established a monastery in Rikon, near Zurich, near Zurich. And then Geshe Rapton was kind of the abbot there for a couple of years, and then he founded his own center near Geneva, Mont Pelerin, down the bottom of the lake near Montreux. And when he passed away, Gonsa Rinpoche took over that practice. So when Trijang Rinpoche passed away and his incarnation was found, he lived in Dharamsala for a while, in the monastery in Gande and Shatse for a while, and then Gonsa Rinpoche took him to Switzerland and kept him there and indoctrinated him with the practice of Shugden, so that even though the incarnation of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche's root guru, Lama Zopa had no connection with him, and we don't have any connection with him. A lot of people don't have any connection with him. He actually lives in Vermont. He has a center in Vermont, but most of us don't go there or have any connection with him because of this Shugden thing. So he was kind of kidnapped, we like to think, by Gonsa and indoctrinated and like that. So he has, I think he's met His Holiness once or twice. I heard he told His Holiness he was going to give it up, but I believe he hasn't. So when I was talking to Gillik Rinpoche about it, he said, look, I'm mindful of His Holiness' advice to give the practice, but whenever I think about giving it up, as His Holiness advises, I remember kneeling in front of my root guru, Trijang Rinpoche, and he's got his dorji, his vajra, on my head, and it's like I promised you, with the vajra on your head, you promised to do this practice for the rest of your life, and if you don't, may my head crack open or something. He said, I making this solemn promise in front of my root guru, to my root guru, that I'll never abandon the practice. So it was very hard for me. Now I've got His Holiness saying do this, and I remember that. So a lot of people were in that conflict situation. But what you're supposed to do is, if you want to follow His Holiness's advice, and you've promised your other gurus that you're going to do the practice, then you have to abandon it with respect, not seeing them as mistaken, not seeing this as a fault in them, maybe as a fault in yourself, saying you don't have the wisdom to see the whole picture. They're doing this for some enlightened reason. I can't fathom that. I'm going to go with His Holiness and the other teachers who aren't doing the practice, but without losing my respect for the gurus that I took the practice from and who even still do it, although most of the great lamas who do it have passed away. But again, this is another test of the guru devotion that we've more recently been put through 20 years ago. So I don't know, Gonzalo Rinpoche obviously was a disciple of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and I don't know what he really thinks, but he was supposed to have said that when His Holiness came out with that His Holiness has lost his mind, His Holiness has gone crazy. So it's not really what a disciple is supposed to say about a Buddha, but I don't know I didn't hear him say it, so I don't know if it's true or not. And even if he did say it, what reason he might have had for it, but there you are. So we're still put through a lot of tests. So again, you have to be very careful who you take as a guru. So you don't just go and take teachings from anybody. Otherwise, if you or initiation in particular, teaching you can kind of have. I think you have the option. Chandrakirti notwithstanding, one verse of teaching 500 lives of a dog. So I think you're actually allowed to go and listen and as part of your checking of the teacher, because it also says in the teachings, listen to the person's teaching to assess whether the person's teachings conflict with what the Buddha taught and what your understanding of the Dharma is. Whether look at that teacher, listen to the person, talk to the students, see how students have turned out. All these different ways of assessing before you make the decision. Now, you're not going to take 12 years probably, but that's one of the recommendations. And on the other hand, then you go to teaching says you could be dead tomorrow. So you're going to die tomorrow bereft of a teacher because you were taking 12 years. If you take an initiation, that then you're establishing a guru-disciple relationship with that teacher. That's kind of no option. With teachings, you do have the option. It's not necessarily making, just by being there, listening to the teaching, thinking about it, you're not necessarily making that guru-disciple commitment. And it's really a commitment. It's something you really make from your own side. It's not that you go and sign a contract with a guru. Although people do go ask a teacher, will you be my guru? And people have asked that, and someone says, no, you should go and study with this teacher or that teacher. Now I don't know if that's happened quite a bit, so I don't know if that teacher is testing to see how, do you really want to be my student, or if I tell you to go and study with someone else, you're going to go, oh, okay, like that. So if you do that, then you're not that committed to the particular teacher. But on the other hand, if you insist and you insist and you insist, then maybe the teacher say, well, okay, but still I think it's, we can have a relationship, but still I think it's better you go. Better for you have stronger karma with that other teacher, So it's not a simple thing like signing up for a class at university with some professor, you know. So generally, in the FPMT, you know, apart from those early hiccups, you know, most of the Geshis who've gone to the centres have been highly qualified and very pure and successful teachers, you know, not empire builders like the first couple. So so Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, over 40, 50 years, it hasn't been a breath of scandal. So we're very fortunate that the leaders of our organisation have set that example. And other teachers who went, other great Geshis, Geshe Champa Gyatso, who went to Italy, and Geshe Champa Tekchog, who went actually first to England and then to Nalanda, and Geshe Tsulga, who came here. A lot of those early Geshis, most of them have worked out pretty well. And if there have been problems, so they've all been monks, pretty much. I think all the teachers that the Lama Yeshe and then Lama Zopa Rinpoche have sent to the Western centres have been Geshis and monks. And if they haven't worked out, it hasn't been because of some kind of sexual abuse scandal or drinking or like that. It's just because they had weird personalities or something, I don't know. And there were a lot of Geshis who used to push Lama, send me, you know, never send them. Because they see, and a lot of them have their own students. Like Geshe Tsulga had his students in house number 2, is it?
Oh, yes.
So we support them, and then Geshe brought Geshe Tenli, his nephew, to sort of be his attendant in 2004, and helped him, his assistant, and so on, and saw him through his Geshe exam, and then so when Geshe-la passed away in 2010, then Lama Zopa Rinpoche appointed Geshe Tenli here for a year to see how it worked out. It worked out, so he's still here. And so, these a lot of these scandals, especially sexual abuse scandals, that have rocked other organizations, from Shambhala to Rigpa to, I don't know, was Lama Nola a monk or not? Seemed to dress like a monk. I don't know. Anyway, most of them, whether it's Trungpa Sogil or Sakyong now or other ones, they haven't been monks. So, if it's a monk engaging sexual misconduct, it's kind of double worse, as bad as it is for a lay teacher to be taking advantage of students, There was one lay teacher in the FPMT, a Westerner, 30 or so years ago, I think, who used to spend a lot of time teaching, 20 years ago, I can't remember how. It was like, and was used to kind of ask female students to go out with him, sometimes, And when he was pulled up for that, it was like, well, I spend so much teaching. How am I going to meet women? So it's not quite the way it's supposed to work, So but I can relate to it a little bit because in the early days I used to go to a lot of dances. You go to a dance to meet people, right? I don't know. Does people still do that? I don't know. That's how we used to do it in the old days, in the 70s, 60s. You want to meet someone, you go to a dance. There are dances everywhere. Every Saturday night, every Friday night, there was a dance. It doesn't happen anymore. No. But I was in the band, so that was a really good way because you got paid to go there, and you're up there. You can sort of check them out and smile, and you're in the band, so it's a bit like that. You're the teacher. You're sort of checking them out. Oh. Anyway, it's not supposed to be like that. Especially if you're married. So you have to be very careful, who you take as a teacher. And it can be a crapshoot. I mean, everything looks nice on the surface, but I think in these other cases, if you dug below the surface, you wouldn't have to dig very deep to see there could be issues. So that this sort of a bell should be ringing, warning bell. So I think if teaches a monk, like His Holiness or like his other great lamas, or I think you're on a little bit safer ground. I guess especially if you're female, Yes? So I'm trying to follow Lama Zopa Rinpoche tradition. It's like you're supposed to teach on a text. They don't even get to the text. You can't even get through the introduction. If there's any similarity, that's probably the only one. What's Rinpoche supposed to teach here? 7.57. Yeah, let's see if he mentions the name of the text. At least I've mentioned 50 verses of Guru Devotion a couple of times, huh?
Yeah.
I've told you where you can get it. Remembering your Guru's kindness to teach you during this degenerate age after Shakyamuni Buddha has passed away, you must develop loving respect for him. He teaches you despite your delusions and does not force you to undergo the hardships that many disciples had to endure in the past, as we were saying. Well, there are still hardships we have to... there's these are more mental hardships now that we have to undergo. When two gurus give conflicting advice, practice Shugden, don't practice Shugden, or join me in this coup, taking over the center, or it was bloodless, or I think. But a lot of people think, a year after this happened, Lama Yeshe passed away, and some people say that it could be because of the schism it created in the organization and amongst the students, and so many students breaching their Guru devotion, creating such negative karma with Lama Yeshe by going to the other side and renouncing him, not still seeing him as a Guru and as a Buddha, but seeing him as evil, that he's in conflict with their beloved Kelsang Gyatso, who had been cultivating them so assiduously for 5 or 6 years. So there are still hardships. He gives you initiations and oral teachings and transmits the unbroken lineages that come from the Buddha himself. He inspires you to attain his state and helps you materially when you need it. Without loving respect for your guru, you will never become enlightened. If you don't respect the state of Buddhahood it represents, how can you hope to attain it? So the various aspects of devoting yourself to the guru by means of thought. So the way we devote ourselves to the guru, if you've read Heart of the Path, or other teachings, by action and by thought. So by action, by serving the guru and so on, and by thought, seeing the Buddha, the main thing, and following his advice. By means of thought, have been taught extensively in such texts as the Gandavyuha Sutra, Gandavyuha Sutra, I don't think it's been translated. And their scripture references are detailed in Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chenmo. So it's in Lamrim Chenmo, it's in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, it's in Heart of the Path, it's in a very extensive section in Essential Nectar. Anybody read that text? Essential Nectar? No, it's a little bit bigger. It's called the Essential Nectar. With a commentary by Geshe Ngawang. It's published by Wisdom Publications. The Essence of Nectar. Lamrim Dutsin Yingpo. Lama Zopa Rinpoche teaches from it sometimes, but there's got a very he likes the Guru Devotion section in that, and I think it's quoted a lot in Heart of the Path. There was this, so as I mentioned before, that Rinpoche's, the textbook that we got in the early Kopan courses, Lama Zopa, was based on Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachings and that he worked on himself, called Wish Fulfilling Golden Sun of the Mahayana Thought Training, subtitled Directing in the Shortcut Path to Enlightenment. The Wish Fulfilling Golden Sun. There wasn't a section on Guru Devotion in that, and Rinpoche didn't teach Guru Devotion in those early, teaches extensively now. That's how we got Heart of the Path, but in those early years didn't teach it to the skeptical Westerners, only later. Yeah.
The second book has 2 chapters.
Oh, okay. I haven't read that. That's good. Yeah.
Basically, His Holiness teaching.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I've never heard His Holiness teach on Guru Devotion. I don't think. If he did, I didn't recognize it as the teaching on that. So Rinpoche used that book, and I worked with him on it for a few years. The last time we worked on it specifically was in 1975, and then he taught for another year or two from it, and then he stopped using it. And then he started using Essential Nectar, and then Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand was always behind it all, And so those are 2 very important Lamrim texts, Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand and Essential Nectar. Of course, now we have Lamrim Chenmo and the 5-volume commentary by Geshe Zopa, and we have so many other Lamrim texts. Unbelievable, You guys don't know how lucky you are. We had nothing to start. We had Herbert Gunther's translation of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, which is like a Kagyu Lamrim text, which is also, I wouldn't recommend Gunther's translation. I got his translation, and the next book I had to buy was a dictionary. So, a lot of words I'd never heard before, or didn't know what they meant. So, he was some kind of professor, you know. But there's other translation. I can't remember whose it is. Published by Snowline, now Shambhala, you know. Jewel Ornament of Liberation. That was about all we had. And so Lama Yeshe always wanted Lama Zopa Rinpoche to finish the wish-fulfilling Golden Sun. There were a lot of gaps. Not any Guru devotion. There was nothing on emptiness. There was nothing on Shine. There was a section on Shine that we lifted from one of His Holiness's earlier books, actually, Opening the Wisdom Eye. So it was very kind of piecemeal. But you know, I didn't have time, or Rinpoche didn't seem to have time. Then after the first Enlightened Experience celebration in 1982, so we had this big event. You heard of the Enlightened Experience celebration? I think there have been 4 of them. The last one was in Mongolia in the early, maybe 2004. First one was in Bodh Gaya and Dharamsala in 82. So after the so Rinpoche gave half the Rinjung Gyatso initiations in Bodh Gaya, and then we moved to Dharamsala, and then there was His Holiness gave teachings on Mahamudra, which were published by Snowline in a called Gelog Kagyu Tradition of Mahamudra, translated by Alex Berzin. And then Song Rinpoche gave initiation and teachings on Chöd and Haruka Bodhi Mandala and Guya Samaja. And then we did Sangha, monks and nuns, did a group retreat, Guya Samaja retreat, and a bunch of lay people did a Guya Samaja retreat somewhere else. We did ours at Tushita. And then after that, Lama Yeshe left to go to Tibet, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche stayed at Tushita in retreat. And before Lama Yeshe left, there was a group Vajrasattva retreat going on at Tushita Retreat Center, Tushita Meditation Center in Dharamsala. There used to be every summer there used to be a group Vajrasattva retreat for a long time. I don't know if they still do it or not. I haven't heard they do it lately. But anyway, it was a very good experience. Before Lama left, there was one Kopan monk there, Charak Lama, not the Charak Lama who's at Sarah now, previous one, Tenzin Dorji, now lives in Germany. He was there, and he was to serve Rinpoche as his cook and attendant during a retreat. And Lama Yeshe said before he left, he told Rinpoche in English in front of me, so I can understand, that now Zopa, I want you and Dr. Nick to finish the Golden Sun during the retreat. So we were the only ones allowed to see Lama Zopa during his retreat. So he had his corner room here, and I stayed somewhere in Tenzin Dorji there, and then the rest of he was kind of sealed off from the rest of the people. So I was like, yes, we're going to finally. He's in prison now. He has to do this book, you know. And you know, I get to see him, work with him every day, which was always kind of nice. So you know, I'd go there and to work at lunchtime, and he'd say, "Come back at 6," you know. So I come back at 6. He'd say, "Come back at 10," or, you know. So he's doing this retreat. And so then finally, you know, then we start work maybe about midnight. And the first thing he told me was, I don't like this book, Wish Fulfilling Golden Sun. I've been thinking about it. I want to do a completely different book. And I want to start by doing the 12 deeds of the Buddha. So you know about the 12 deeds? You know, we do Sakadawa and all that. So I said, okay, better than nothing. So then we started working on the 12 deeds. So anyway, it's a long story. I'm not going to go into it now. It's no time. But after a couple of months, we'd made little progress, and then had to leave to go to Kopan So I was running the centre in Delhi at the time. Supposedly, but other people were running because I wasn't there. So then I went to Kopan with Rinpoche. We got to Kopan, and so I went up there ready to work. And he wasn't really retreat, so he should have a lot more time. So at lunchtime, he's meeting these people. In the evening, there's something else. Come back at 10. So we came back, and then we started work. So then he said, I've been thinking about this, and I've decided I don't want to use the 12 Ds at all. I want to make my Lam Rim book based on essential nectar. So I was like, okay, better than nothing. So we started on essential nectar on the Guru devotion verses. So we started with the first verse and many other obstacles. It's another long story. I don't have time to tell you now, but it's very interesting. And so after a month or two of this, it was time for the Kopan course. And 82. So not only that, but Tushita, we were having our second Tushita Dharma celebration, and the first one was the year before in 81. It was supposed to be with His Holiness, but His Holiness couldn't make it. So we had the Home Minister as the guest of honour. But the second one in 82, this year, I'm talking about, His Holiness was coming, so I had to get to Delhi in time for that. And so then I had to leave. So we'd got most of the way through the Guru devotion section of Essential Nectar, with Rinpoche explaining verses, and that's the beginning of the new edition of the Wish Fulfilling Golden Sun. So I handed over my work to an Australian student, Kyogen, and he took over from me, and I went to Delhi. And then they did some more, and then the course started, and then after the course, Rinpoche never got back to it. So the Wish Fulfilling Golden Sun never got finished. The one that's online is still the one that we last worked on in 75. I forget what happened to the teachings Rinpoche gave on the 12 deeds, probably in some notebook somewhere. All the teachings that Rinpoche gave on the Guru Devotion section of the Essential Nectar went to Venerable Ailsa, who was the editor of Heart of the Path. So most of those made it into Heart of the Path, so they're not lost. So why Rinpoche didn't accomplish Lama Yeshe's instruction to finish the Golden Sun, I don't know. But there we are. So Ashvagosha's, 50 verses is the most comprehensive summary of devoting yourself to your guru by means of action. Its scriptural sources by means of action. Its scriptural sources are a wide range of tantric texts, including the Guhya Samaja, Kalachakra, Chakravara, Vajrakini, Vajradaya Lamkara Tantras, and the specific tantric sources for each verse are given in Lama Tsongkhapa's Fulfillment of All Hopes, his commentary on the text. So we'll continue this next time Geshe goes away. Whenever that'll be. When's that? We don't know. Isn't someone coming? December? Anyway, let's see what happens. Okay, sorry to be so useless. Just a quick dedication. We've got Guru Puja at 12:45, is it?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's Guru Puja. We do twice a month. People who've taken certain initiations, Vajragini, Chakravara, are supposed to have a commitment to do it twice a month. But it's a very key practice of the Guru devotion. And I don't know if you've seen the Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive multimedia presentations. At the moment, it's called Guru Puja, is a heart practice. So these multimedia things have Rinpoche's teachings and text and video and audio where he explains how to do the chanting and photographs. So it's a very rich presentation. We're about halfway through. So that's like incredible commentary on the Guru Puja practice, which is very powerful. Kind of 7-limb practice on steroids, with Guru devotion and 7-limb practice. So very powerful purification and creation of merit. So I say not a lot of people come to Guru Puja, but it's a kind of important practice. Okay.
Thank you. Page 39.
Medoda Milavni Egembade Sangation to make the Buwagi Yasubasho Jesu Lame Kosu Tunching
Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Page 43, Long Life, Short Long Life, Pray for His Holiness. In that snow mountain encircled land, source of every benefit and joy, may Lord Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezig remain in life till samsara's end. Page 49, Short Long Life, Flare for Lama Zopa Rinpoche. You uphold the subduous moral way, who serves the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Mandina's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers, honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. Page 57, Prayers of Dedication. Through this virtue may I swiftly, having gained Guru Buddha's state, place each and every sentient being without exception in that state. Precious supreme Bodhi mind, may it where unborn arise, and where born never decline, but increase forevermore. And page 75, Mixema. Dignity